Data Storytellers. Today, I'm here with Jenifer Jones-Barbato, who is the Vice President of Data and Analytics at Bacardi. Great to have you with us.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, so Jenifer and I had a few smaller conversations, which now I'll be eager to dive into. So just to start with, though, tell us a little bit about your background, your journey to becoming a data leader at Bacardi.
Sure. So by education, I'm an engineer. So I have industrial engineering as well as a little bit of operations and research and statistics in there. And really, when I was growing up, I loved puzzles. I have a feeling a lot of people in this space loved puzzles, logic puzzles, thinking about how they can solve problems, reading mystery stories, and I wanted to be Sherlock Holmes. So for me, I wanted a job that was going to let me be Sherlock Holmes, to solve mysteries for people every day. Didn't totally work out that way. Although I do think that my journey from ERP implementations and consulting through business intelligence reporting, data warehousing, all the way up through advanced analytics and data science has really been about solving problems for people and solving their mysteries from their data. As I progressed through my career, I realized that it was really cool to solve problems, and it's great to show people things they didn't know and have a little bit of magic involved there. But it was also really cool when you had a team to be able to celebrate what they were doing. And I realized that as a leader, I've kind of transitioned into being Dr. Watson, to being the person that celebrates those people telling the stories and solving those mysteries. And I find a lot of joy in being able to kind of highlight how my team succeeds to other people.
So I guess it comes from this place you kind of alluded to, but what really made you fall in love with the strategic side of data and analytics? So what do you like most about the roles that you've been in?
So I think data and analytics, and this is probably why you see it in so many different parts of a company, because it really transcends across every function. And it's really something that looks at the total business, and everything that you do impacts the business or has the potential to impact the business. So I think it was really interesting to start with looking at use cases and, how can I build this dashboard or how can I build this model? But what really got interesting was taking it from delivery to decision. So not just delivering something, but then working in that collaborative atmosphere with other business leaders to figure out how they were going to use it to make decisions and to take actions. And I think that that's really where it becomes transformative.
And you've been at a number of companies. So just looking at the LinkedIn there, so you Estee Lauder, T Connectivity, now with Bacardi, and Jellyfish as well. So kind of like a very diverse background. So you probably have a pretty good insight as to the state of these industries, these organizations today. So in general, take the organization out of it, but how do you see the state of data functions and the general progress of data-driven business transformation today?
Sure. It's really interesting because I think that there's different levels of maturity for a lot of different organizations. I think organizations that didn't necessarily start digital are a little bit behind in that kind of data driven journey, because they're coming up to speed, they're becoming more literate, they're learning how to use their data. And then others that naturally were born out of the kind of the internet age, I'll say, they've had data since day one, right? They never wrote anything down on a notebook. They put it into a computer. So they've run ahead and really made some great advances that other people in the industry can use as well. So I think there's definitely different levels of maturity. And I think that there's still the need for the foundation in some areas for really focusing on the data itself and making sure that it's high quality data, that it's well structured for analysis, and that you can really use it to get to that business value. And I think that there's just, I'm going to try to say this. There's just different levels of maturity out there. And I think across the industries, you can see it run the gamut.
It's so interesting. You kind of touched on the data management piece there, which I think is something that gets overlooked quite a bit. You probably have a bit more visibility than most in the current role there. So one thing we like to talk about here at the Data Storytellers, as the name suggests, is stories and storytelling. So what we find is when we work with less tech natives, but kind of like the more legacy companies that are leveraging this maybe a little lower on the maturity level, just out of necessity because they've been around for many years and doing different processes in a certain way. So you have this data story that's being transmitted throughout the business. So that's where a lot of the spotlight I think tends to be on. But what is lacking in that is the person telling the story, and the person doesn't have to be an individual contributor. It can be a function or a strategic element of the business is telling that story, and also the individuals receiving that story. So the reason I bring this up is because there you mentioned about having the right foundations in data. So can you talk about some of the what you mean by that and some of the ways that you guys are leveraging that?
Sure. And I think it's technical foundations, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you need to have the right technical foundation, and there isn't one right answer for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
That's definitely true. But I think besides that, you need to have people that are passionate in the area. So, I'm lucky. My current team, and I would say most of the teams and people I've worked with are passionate in the area of data and analytics. And I think you probably find that in a lot of places. So having people who really like what they're doing is really important. That's a great foundation. You have those resources, those people who really want to get into this and do the right thing. And I think also the relationships with the business teams. So if I happen to be in a technology function, and we have really close relationships with a lot of different business teams. So I think having that relationship and being able to translate for those people so that they understand, how is this going to help me? How is this going to be what I can use, telling that story to them to say, this is how the KPI looks, and you can use this in this way. I think is really important.
Yeah, you mentioned there the relationships with the business teams. That's something I definitely want
Yeah.
to get into. Obviously, we're seeing an influx of data analytics professionals in a lot of these, let's call them legacy companies. So when you look at the role, like for example, your role or a CDO role, what role do these leaders play in terms of helping their data teams to work with the business? What's the best way for them, or some of the best ways for them to go about doing that?
I think that the best way is and I'm saying business partners, but in my mind, I'm thinking you don't want to have that divide, right? You don't want to
Mm,
have people thinking that they're on two different teams, because at the end of the day, they're working towards the same goal. So I think making sure that people feel kind of secure in that collaborative team space, that they understand the goals, that all of the leaders also understand that that collaboration is needed, and it's not about line management. It's
mhm.
really about getting to that end goal. Having that kind of foundation, I think, is really important when it comes to I think organizations where people aren't in the same area. And so breaking down those silos, and really that working to get that ways of working becomes more working together, and it's
Mm.
not a business versus tech team. It's more of a collaborative work.
Yes, and we see this at a lot of the conferences. It tends to be like a bunch of the more junior data guys, so less strategic, more tactical, who go there and say the business isn't using our data. What do you think are some of the best ways to reframe those conversations, then to get rid of this divide in that sense?
So one of the things, yeah, I think one of the statistics that always comes up is, businesses are using about 70% or 65% of their data, right? So there is plenty of data available. It is not a lack of data, and it is not a lack of things to do or problems to be solved.
Mm.
So I think sometimes there's a little bit of fear that comes into play, and really just working with people to overcome that fear, because there's a lot to do, and the more that you work with other people, the more that you have them challenge you, the more that you can challenge them, the better the solution's going to be at the end.
Mm. So, what do you think are some of the key challenges for data transformation leaders today?
Sure. I think resources, right? Getting the right people in. We're seeing, I don't want to say a shortage, but getting the right people in can be a challenge,
Mm.
because there are a lot of people that get snapped up really quickly. And so finding the right resources, I think, is definitely a challenge. But I think that on more of a leadership perspective, I think it's being able to be confident in knowledge not only of the data and the analytics space, but also in the business space. So making sure that you understand things like a profit and loss statement or how advertising and promotion spend works, being able to have that confidence in kind of those areas, I think combined with data and analytics knowledge is really one of the big challenges.
Mm. And that's super interesting because as data leaders, you are the purveyors of truth in the business. But if you can't transmit that in the right way and deliver it, then what we see is that these great initiatives tend to be left at the wayside, or they tend to be kind of put with the chaff when they should be with the wheat, right? So
Yeah.
this is kind of what we focus on here again is a lot about the delivery side. So from your experience, what are some of the best ways for data analytics leaders to gain more influence on the business side of things?
I mean, I think it starts with well, actually, it can start with just finding that one business partner, who really believes in it and talking to them, using them in a mentoring type relationship so that you understand how their peers are seeing data and analytics and some of their challenges. And then building that network from there, I think looking not just at how data can solve their problems, but really what are the problems that they're trying to solve. So kind of shifting it around the other way. And at the same time, I think it's important that it's not just that top leadership because while they have problems they want to solve, somebody has to solve them. So it's also very important to think about how you can bring a culture of data literacy to the
Mm.
entire organization, because in order to really reap the benefits, everybody has to be involved and everybody has to be on board with using solutions and adopting them. The Like you said, the worst thing is building something and saying it's going to be so valuable and then nobody adopts it. So you lose out on all of that potential benefit. So I think that culture of data literacy at every level of the organization is really important.
Yes, and this is something I definitely want to dive into with the data literacy piece, because another part of this is okay, we're talking data literacy now, so someone else is talking about fluency, and people don't really appreciate the differences. Obviously, we all want the more fluency side of things, but why is that? Well, literacy at its root cause means to understand, and literacy fluency means to communicate. So
Mhm.
obviously, like any language, if you understand like words on a piece of paper, that's great. But if you can't communicate that in the right way, then that's why people want fluency. And then you ask the next question, which is, okay, how do I leverage data fluency? And the way to do that is by humanizing data and analytics. So then
Mhm.
you ask another question, well, how do I go about doing that? And then as you've alluded to there, you find a key stakeholder, you find someone, one partner who believes in the data side of things. You talk about leveraging small wins. You talk about building the right solutions at the right time for the right groups or individuals. So
Yep.
this is why I love the whole fluency piece. So how important do you think that the soft skills side play into leveraging a culture of data literacy?
I, uh, I I think that gets underestimated, the soft skills, and I think that it can be hard to it can be hard to bring somebody who is highly analytical and highly focused in kind of solving that problem. It can be hard to train them in some of those soft skills just because, they're not thinking about it that way. But I think that we do a disservice by only focusing on technical skills and not focusing on those soft skills because they are really important, and I would say that they're more important.
Mm.
And so, in terms of mentoring relationships, as leaders, being a mentor to other people and really helping them build those soft skills. So having meetings with them if they're not good at presenting, giving them opportunities to present their ideas and really working with them, giving them feedback, I think is really important. But yeah, I don't think soft skills gets enough attention, particularly if it's a technology. Like if you're really just focused kind of on the technical side, a lot of people in that space don't necessarily focus on the
Mm.
soft skills.
So when you obviously you're charged with bringing this to the organization. So what do you think are some of the soft skills of those leaders who you see potential in, who inspire the real change, who toe the line really nicely between the technical and the art, let's say?
Yeah, and I think talking about the story is really important. So there is I find it most useful to have a good example. So it's great when you can say, yeah, these are the use cases and these are the benchmarks. But if you have something that really speaks to somebody, so if you can say in your area, this is something either we've done or we would like to do, and really
Hmm.
make it real for them. So to connect with them on something that's close to what they're looking for or close to a problem they're trying to solve, I think that that's really important in terms of getting buy-in and feedback. And to do that, you're not going to, put a math equation right in front of them. You're not going to necessarily put tables and ER diagrams in front of them because you'll get glazed looks. So it's not only about being able to verbally communicate kind of that story and where you're trying to go, but also you really do have to be able to visually represent it for
Mm.
people so that they can understand it and they can bring it to others and hopefully pass that story along.
Mm. And visualization is a key point in this for sure. And I think that it's not necessarily underestimated, but I think that the actual verbal communication side, because what you're looking for is buy-in, right? So when you buy something, it's something you're attracted to. You have, maybe it has a purpose, maybe it's just like a nice to have. When you position data analytics in the business, it needs to be positioned in a way that it's not nice to have. This is how you create a culture where data analytics is a foundational pillar of the business, right? So what I'd be interested in kind of when we paint these pictures is, what do you see are the big pitfalls that when data leaders are delivering this that they're missing out on? Is it because, like you said, it's too text heavy? Is it something else?
I mean, I think it could be that, or when you're doing certain things. So you just talked about visualizations, and you kind of made this come up in my mind. But one of the things that often comes up is you're presenting a visual without presenting what the visualization is really supposed to be telling you.
Mm,
So sometimes you need to kind of lead people into understanding what the numbers are saying or understanding what the graph is saying, because they may not be there yet. So I think that one of the things about telling the story is that sometimes it's too technical, and sometimes we assume that people know more than they may actually know from looking at something.
mm. So that takes a lot of humility there, because this something we hear a lot on the show is about how you need to be assertive as I said earlier, as a purveyor of the truth of the organization. You have a strong mandate to be assertive and be courageous, but you also have to bring people on that journey. You can't just like a bull in a china shop, go in and start messing things up, because you're dealing with people. You're not dealing with systems. You're not dealing with
Yep.
processes that are have no emotional attachment intelligence. So how do you balance the humbleness, the humility, with that courageous and assertiveness that data so rightly has?
Yeah, and you're also, you're telling people sometimes, hey, the way you've been doing something, it's wrong. That's the hardest one, is when you go in with data that completely goes against everything that people may have been doing for a while, and you can't go in there and just say, ah, you're doing it wrong, you don't know anything, because oftentimes these people have 10, 15, 20, 25 years of experience, and that's not good. So I think it's about personality and relationship building. I mean, it really is about going in and acknowledging success, or acknowledging how things have been done, and then acknowledging that as times change, as we gather more data or as we learn more, we have to also shift. So showing people that you recognize successes from the past, but also how they can get more success in the
Mm.
future.
I love the idea of walking into a board meeting and telling all of the senior leaders that they're wrong, because that's the fastest way to lose that trust. It's like
Yeah.
a bucket. You're filling it out drop by drop by drop, and then all it takes is one wrong move to kick the bucket over, and all of the trust spills out, and then you're back to square one. So this is, I think,
Yeah.
one of the big pitfalls, is because you can
Especially
put.
if they're creatives, like
Mm,
anything. If you're looking at somebody who's like had a campaign, or something that they've poured their heart and soul into, and that they really believe, and they've been doing trending for years, and they know what it is, and to be like, well, it's not really doing very well, that is not a good conversation to have.
mm. And as you said earlier, it shouldn't be the business on the one side and the data on the other. It's all about that mutual collaboration, because as data leaders, we want data to be part and parcel with as I said earlier, with the foundations of the business. That's what culture change is, essentially. But at the same time, you need to be able to work with the business to leverage that kind of change there. So I'd be interested to know what role did these skills, like when you were balancing the line, building the relationships, how did these skills play into your career, whether it's at Bacardi or some of your previous
Mhm.
organizations?
um I think it's it's gotten better. over the years. I think sometimes it's difficult because if you're not technical enough, you're not believed. But if
Mm,
you're too technical, then I don't understand you. So that balance is hard, and I think that as I think it's something that comes with maturity through understanding relationships with people. I think there's a psychological component in there, even a little bit, to understand how each person reacts to things. So I've definitely had challenges where people have said to me, "You're just too nice,"
mm,
and so don't like you can maybe that assertiveness isn't there, or they assume that you're just going to be nice and do whatever they want, right? And that's a challenge as well, and that was probably one of the harder challenges to overcome. But I think that as you learn more about how people themselves are, it becomes easier and easier to figure out the right way to have that interaction.
mm. So with all that in mind, then, what do you think are the greatest opportunities for ambitious leaders who, they're listening, they know what they agree, they're nodding their head. What are the tangible next steps, do you think, that they can take away from this?
So I think that for a lot of data and analytics leaders, one of the hardest things is value. So one of the hardest things to prove is the value from data and analytics. Everybody knows it's valuable, right? Exposing data is valuable in and of itself. Getting people to use it is valuable. But there's times when people want an ROI. I spent this and I want this. And it can be really challenging to get to that. And I found that one of the things that I've been challenged to do in the past, and that I think is challenging, is talk to those people that are using some of the tools, some of the
Mm.
models or the dashboards, and ask them, what are you doing with this? And get their stories. Because if you can go to a senior leader with stories from their team, it is much more powerful for them in terms of their belief.
Mm. That's I like the idea of, you talk about relationship building, but also building relationships with the functions, the people in the function, multiple people, multiple stakeholders to build like a what you might call a business case, which is great. And you mentioned value there. So again, a lot of what we talk about here will tie into how these three pillars, these Trinitarian structure of value in the one hand, and status, and then
Hmm.
having that right positioning of yourself, and then the trust piece, which is how you leverage that. And all of these factors play off each other, and this is what we find is
Yeah.
the art of data transformation, as I mentioned earlier, because you have the technical side, you have metrics, someone can bring you a project, or they can bring you a business challenge, you can solve that, and that's all great. But you don't want to end up being a function of report takers. This is the difference between the data leaders who are, they're on that strategic level, as opposed to those who just kind of they're at the whim of the business, for better or worse, right? So
Mhm.
that's just a kind of like a bit of a side point there. So you mentioned trust there. What are some of the best ways to build that trust, and then facilitate and sustain that as well?
So, I mean, succeeding at whatever you're delivering is obviously the best way, right?
Mhm.
Right? It's much easier to get someone to trust you when you've successfully delivered what they've asked for, but that can take time. And we all know that there's implementations of certain things take a lot of time. So I've always found that having a focused proof of concept or proof of value, minimum viable product, whatever you want to call it,
Mm.
is the quickest way to start to build trust with somebody who may not necessarily believe in what you're trying to build long term. Because you show them quickly that you can translate what they wanted into a deliverable, and
Mhm.
then you've built that kind of the trust of, also, I want to ask your opinion on this, right? So it's not just, I'm going to go off, I'm going to build you exactly what you asked for, and then I'm going to come back in 6 months.
Mm.
Chances are it's not what they really wanted, and you were too late. So I
Mhm.
think having that, to get that trust, you have to go quick, you have to be iterative, and you have to ask for feedback. You have to get that feedback from whomever your stakeholder is, to make sure that you truly understand what they want to do with whatever's being built.
Yeah, so my next question does tie into that. So once you have all that, how do you define data drivenness or a lack thereof?
I think for a lot of businesses, you see it in the transformation in how they're doing. So, for certain organizations, you can quickly see where they've started to play more in data and analytics because it translates
Mm,
into their value and their success. And I think that anyone who has a CEO or members of a leadership team talking about data and analytics, I think that's a key success factor right there because it's on their minds. They're thinking about it day to day. It's when it comes up in strategies, not just the tech strategy, but when all functions have it as part of their strategy, that means that everybody is thinking about how they can use data to bring the business to the next step.
hmm. That's so interesting. So what is your approach in the process then of reaching out to and nurturing these processes and establishing these fruitful relationships on a longer term basis?
Oof. So I'm fairly new in my current role. So I've been, doing a lot of this, and it it's going to come down to a bit of that personal relationship. Being able to be fearless in talking to people and asking them questions, being curious about where their challenges are, because that's the start of that relationship. Is really trying to probe what's bothering them. What are
Mm,
their pain points, and then I think just following up on that, keeping consistent checkpoints, consistently checking in, making sure that they know that they're heard, that it's not just a nod and a walk
mm.
away, but that you're really listening and you're really trying to think about the best way to help them solve their problem.
Mm. So you've kind of been on this journey and done this rodeo before. So whether it's now or in previous roles, you've probably worn a bunch of different kind of hats, let's say. So do you see yourself as a change agent across the business? Are you like the data evangelist, the data champion, the data guard? How would you characterize your role?
I would definitely say probably in the data champion world. I Whenever I get a chance to talk about data and analytics, I've been told that the speed of my voice as I go along just gets faster and faster the
Mm,
more that I get into it. So definitely a data evangelist. I love talking to people about it. I really enjoy talking to people about how they can use it. More so than the tools that they need. I'm probably less. I Not that I glaze over, but I don't want
mm.
to talk about the specific tool set. I want to talk about what's really bothering you, what's really the problem you're trying to solve, and I think that that's really the most important part.
So just again, kind of touching again on the literacy piece there. So how do you approach the education of the wider organization?
So in the past, I've done it through building out a community of practice. So it's really great when you have, again, some senior leaders who are just hyper focused and really believe in this space,
Mm,
because partnering with them to build a larger community of people within their teams, and then thinking about what you can bring to them that they're not getting in their everyday. So be it external speakers, so maybe it's somebody from something like MIT coming down to talk about something cool and new that they're doing, having the leaders themselves talk about it, and then bringing people together from different functions within a business to solve a problem.
mm,
And it might not be a problem that is in their day-to-day space, but bringing them together to think about it, it starts to challenge people because in how they think about data analysis, right? So you can see different people approach it by, I want to explore the data first. I want to throw it all into a huge machine learning algorithm and see what comes out. I want to
mm.
do this. Everybody's got their own different way. But when you bring people together to try to solve a problem that they may not be completely comfortable with, you start to see how they all respect the different ways that they each work.
Mm. So it kind of sounds like you already have this rigorous process in place, even though it's around the emotional intelligence, it's around the softer skills, as we've said. It sounds like there's kind of a process within this, which is really great. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit?
In terms of,
The process for that kind of engagement,
uh,
actually how you go
got it.
about approaching it.
So I mean, the way that I've done it in the past is to you starting with kind of you it's really easy to find those people that are passionate about data and analytics. So you start with them and you kind of start to talk to them, find out what they're doing, and then you get that larger group together again, I call it, or think about it as a community, but it's really about starting small, showing the value, showing the excitement, getting other people excited, and having other people want to join or want to
Mm,
learn more. And as you build that up, you'll see just naturally it grows and more people want to learn about the space.
yeah. So Jenifer, great episode. You know, a lot of really good insights, especially around the engagement piece, which is obviously a big part of what we do here. So, how does this stuff currently leverage itself at Bacardi in a very general sense? You know, where are these guys in the journey? You know, are you seeing kind of similar patterns? Is it kind of a different challenge to what you've experienced before?
I think a lot of the challenges are very similar. But I think that, we're lucky. We've got an amazing culture at Bacardi. So it's very family, it's very
Mm,
fearless. We all want to work together. And I think that's really the transformative thing within the company. So I'm excited about my future there, and the team that I work with is just
mm.
top notch.
Amazing. So, last question: what advice would you have for aspiring data leaders today?
Um, Challenge yourself, challenge others, and stay curious.
Mhm. Great. Well, Jenifer, thanks so much for coming on the show, and we hope to have you on again sometime soon.
Great. Thank you so much.